An emotional handwritten letter from an emergency room doctor at New York Presbyterian Hospital to the family of a breast cancer patient who died is inspiring millions of Americans.
The family posted the letter online, and it reads, "In my 20 years as a doctor in the emergency room, I have never written to a patient or a family member, as our encounters are typically hurried and do not always allow for more personal interaction. However, in your case, I felt a special connection to your wife, who was so engaging and cheerful in spite of her illness and trouble breathing. I am sorry for your loss, and I hope you can find comfort in the memory of your wife's great spirit and of your loving bond. My heartfelt condolences go out to you and your family."
Let's talk about this remarkable letter with CBS News medical correspondent Dr. Jon LaPook, who spent a lot of time in the ER when he was a resident at New York Presbyterian's Columbia University campus. John, good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, how unusual is a letter like this?
It's pretty unusual, and if you look at the comments online, they're split between, "This is such a beautiful letter," and "Boy, I wish my doctor could do something like this."
I can understand that, because a lot of people would like to feel like their doctor maybe has a more personal vested interest. Why do you think it is widespread that sometimes doctors put that wall up?
Well, I think, this is something that I'm doing myself and I teach my students. You're always building a wall between yourself and your patient. And you don't want to make it too thick, because then you miss out on the good stuff. You don't want to make it too thin or porous, because then you get nailed emotionally. So you're constantly re-sculpting it. I try to err on the side of making it a little bit maybe too thin, because, you'd rather get emotionally connected rather than missing out.
Do you think this letter then is going to inspire doctors to make that wall a little thinner, maybe?
I don't know about that. I think it is an interesting thing that people were so moved. I mean, it was a simple act of kindness. And I think people in the emergency room think you come in and you're immediately put in a CAT scan machine and you're lined up, and computers and texting and email, and nobody thinks about somebody just having a simple relationship with you. And by the way, the fact that it was a handwritten letter, it harkens back to a time when things were simpler, and even the manners involved in just taking the time to write the letter and put it in an envelope with a stamp. It just shows a certain level of compassion.
Well, it has to be difficult for doctors. You're dealing with not only the pain and suffering of your patients, but also you see their families. And in a case of death, it cannot be easy.
It is very difficult. I can still remember the first patient who died when I was taking care of them, and I can tell you the name of the person. It's over 30 years later. And hopefully you never get to the point where it doesn't mean anything to you.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it's got to be difficult to decide how to make that choice if you're going to say something or do something like this.
I think there is a question about giving somebody their privacy, too. When you are in an emergency room, you're seeing it's busy, and you're seeing maybe 5 patients in an hour. A nurse may be seeing 10 people in an hour. For every patient you're seeing, you're also taking care of 1 or 2 of their family members. So there's a lot going on. You're juggling a lot of things, and to take the time to actually have a relationship with one person, I think it's very moving and a compelling story in this case, that this doctor, and by the way, we don't know a lot of details about it, but the doctor, male or female, actually felt so emotionally connected to take the time later on to write this letter. I find it very moving.
When do you think the wall gets too wide?
I think it can get too wide just naturally. You cannot open yourself up to every single patient. I mean, you would think theoretically that would be a good thing to do, right? Just always make that connection. But I think in my training, there were times when the end of a shift, when somebody had died, I just slumped in a chair and I just was wiped out. And time again, that happens to you. You sort of widen that wall, and then you realize, wait a second, I'm not connecting. It's different also in the emergency room, because in the emergency room, you're generally just seeing the person for a few hours. In my practice, I'm an internist and gastroenterologist. I see people for 10, 20, 30 years, so it's not unusual for me to have that longer relationship, for them to even call me on my cell, or for me to, know everything about their family.
So is there a lesson that here for patients and families as well, do you think?
Well, I think patients should expect a certain level of understanding and compassion and connection with their doctor. And I think patients are probably afraid to fire a doctor, but if you have, especially, I think the emergency room is a special place, because you're going in, it's an emergency situation. This is an unusual act of kindness. But in your general life, if your doctor is not connecting with you, if you're feeling they're just not listening to you, and you feel that they really ultimately don't really care, you feel that they're not hurt, they're not feeling your pain a little bit, then maybe it's time to find another doctor.
All right. Dr. Jon LaPook, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks, doctor.